Good evening and welcome to Lightning Talks. I'm Jim Wharton. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the Vice President for Conservation Engagement and Learning here at the aquarium. Now we're coming to you live from the Seattle Aquarium on the shores of Puget Sound in the traditional and contemporary territories of the Coast Salish people. And we want to welcome you from wherever you're calling home tonight. But Seattle this evening is only our departure point on an 8,000-mile journey to the Coral Triangle. Now, stretching from the tip of the Philippines in the north to Indonesia in the west and the Solomon Islands in the east, the Coral Triangle covers 2.2 million square miles of the most biologically diverse marine habitat on Earth. The Coral Triangle features 600 species of corals, 2,200 species of reef fish, hundreds of species of sharks and rays, 6 of the 7 species of marine sea turtles, not to mention the largest mangrove forests on the planet. The resources of the Coral Triangle support the lives of 120 million people in the region, including a $12 billion nature-based tourism industry. Now, the Coral Triangle is also the focus of the Seattle Aquarium's new Ocean Pavilion expansion, opening this summer. We chose the Coral Triangle as our focus because we know that the threats facing ocean systems are global in scale. And we wanted to tell the story of another diverse and beautiful but threatened region to help us put what's happening in the Puget Sound and the Greater Salish Sea into the proper context. The challenges that are facing the Coral Triangle are suspiciously similar to those that are facing the Salish Sea. Climate change, overfishing, habitat loss, plastic pollution. It follows that our best chance of reversing these threats and regenerating the ocean lies in working together. Now, tonight, we're changing up our format just a little bit. We have 4 amazing speakers on 4 intriguing topics. Plus, we're going to dedicate a little time this evening to the new Ocean Pavilion and share a few insider peeks and previews of the upcoming exhibit. Now, if you've never been to a Lightning Talks event before, here's what you can expect. 4 speakers have 5 minutes each to share one big idea and not 1 second more. They will get a warning at 1 minute. They'll get another warning at 30 seconds and then at time. And if they go over, they'll get this. And we like to keep things moving, so we won't be stopping for questions after each speaker. But if you have questions or comments, please do put those into the chat. And at the end of the evening, we're going to bring all of our speakers back to the Lightning Talk stage for a Q&A conversation. Now, if you enjoy what you see tonight and would like to support the Seattle Aquarium, please do consider a donation. When you donate to the Seattle Aquarium, you're joining us in our mission of inspiring conservation of our marine environment. And if you haven't yet, please do click like and subscribe. We have a really special program this evening, and I can't wait to get started. So please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Christine Dudgeon. Christine is a senior research fellow for the University of the Sunshine Coast and the University of Queensland. Christine was recently presented the Seattle Aquarium's Conservation Research Award for her contributions to the scientific foundations of the STAR Project, whose goal is to boost natural populations of Indo-Pacific leopard sharks with eggs raised at facilities like the Seattle Aquarium. Christine, are you ready to kick us off this evening?
Hi, Jim, I am. Yes, thank you.
Excellent. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone, and greetings from the other side of the Pacific Ocean. I'm excited tonight to talk to you about this novel shark conservation initiative that's happening right now in the Coral Triangle called the STAR Project. So the aim of the STAR Project is to reestablish a healthy, self-sustaining, and genetically diverse population of Indo-Pacific leopard sharks, or zebra sharks as you may know them, through augmentation with animals bred in human care or translocated from healthy populations elsewhere. And I'm going to focus on this genetically diverse concept as part of it. So there are 2 major considerations in genetics for rewilding. These are inbreeding and outbreeding. I'll talk about outbreeding first. So we're concerned with outbreeding Essentially, outbreeding is when we introduce animals that are too genetically distant into the target population. There's a couple of reasons why. So firstly, maybe they don't do very well. And so we find that they don't take to that target population. Secondly, they might do too well. And what we can find is they overwhelm any genetic signal left in the target population from those animals. So this is called genetic pollution. And to deal with this, what we need to do is source animals to release that are as close to as genetically possible to the target population. And we need to know information on the population genetic structure for the species. In the case of leopard sharks, this information we have from work I did in my PhD, where I screened the whole distribution of the species and found that it's split into two major populations that are separated by that red line there. So that red line runs through the middle of Southeast Asia, Indonesia, and it coincides with a feature called the Indonesian Through Flow Current. This is a deep, fast-moving body of water where the Pacific Ocean and Indian Oceans meet. It's also an important biogeographical feature known as the Wallace Line. And this is named after Alfred Wallace. He was around the same time as Charles Darwin, and he also came up with the theory of natural selection. But while Darwin was over in the Galapagos studying finches, Wallace was here in Southeast Asia, also looking at some birds, but things like marsupials and distribution of monkeys. In the last few decades, we know that the Wallace Line is also important for marine animals like our leopard sharks. And Raja Ampat, the location for our STAR project, is on this eastern side of the Wallace Line. And our STAR genetics team, we use genetics to screen all potential breeding animals from aquariums around the world to see if they have that genetic signal from the eastern population and are therefore appropriate breeders for our program. Now, the other consideration I want to mention is inbreeding. So we can use genetics to test for how closely related those individuals are in the different aquariums and across aquariums and whether they should breed. Now, why is this something we need to know about? Sharks are like us in that they receive half of their DNA from mum and half of their DNA from dad. So at every single gene region, of which they have many, many, they'll have two gene copies, one from mum, one from dad. Now, if the parents aren't related, mostly those gene copies are different to each other. But when the parents, and you occasionally get one that's the same, but when the parents are closely related, you find that there's more copies that are the same. And this can be a problem because if any of those gene copies have a bad mutation, then that could result in poor health or even reduced survival in those offspring. Now, we can avoid that by informing which animals to breed together, but there's another form of inbreeding that we also need to take into consideration. And this is called parthenogenesis, and that translates into virgin birth. Essentially, the females are able to produce babies all by themselves without any male contribution. Now, we don't know exactly how it works, but we know that the genetic signal is that at every single gene region, they have two identical gene copies. So that problem of the bad alleles being expressed and reducing the health and survival of the offspring becomes even more important with parthenoids. So we try to avoid sending these into the target population. Now, there are over 10 shark and ray species for which parthenogenesis has been recorded from. And most of these examples are from females who are in facilities by themselves without any exposure to males at all. However, with the STAR project, we've started to find that actually there are, this is occurring where we have males in facilities too. So it really raises a whole lot of questions about reproduction for these species and highlights that there's a lot that we don't know yet. And, we're excited to do that work. And I made it. Yay. Okay. And thank you to all of the people that are involved in the STAR project and the Bigger Reshark project.
Thank you, Christine. I love it. And you made it with plenty of time. I have kind of a silly question. Over on this part of the world, we call Indo-Pacific leopard sharks zebra sharks.
Yes.
Why would you call an animal with spots a zebra shark?
Well, hopefully you saw the pictures in the presentation of when they're babies. So when they're babies, they are nice and stripy, and that's where the zebra or zebra form refers to. When they're adults, they lose those stripes pretty quickly, and so by the time they're probably at least even 6 months old, they're mostly spotty, and then those change into all sorts of spotting patterns in the adults. But the reason I think that they got the name zebra rather than leopard is because there's another species called a leopard shark. And that's a type of dogfish, and that one is found in the Eastern Pacific, so in your neck of the woods, but a bit further south. So that's off the coast of California and Mexico. And so in the wild, the Eastern Pacific leopard shark and our Indo-Pacific leopard shark do not co-occur, but they do co-occur sometimes in aquariums. And so, and common names are by their nature common in that they're what people refer to them wherever they're found. So, this species, certainly where we see it in the wild, most people refer to it as a leopard shark. Or, of course, in Indonesia, for example, they have their own name, Q bilimbing.
Love that. Well, thank you very much, Christine. Christine will be back for the Q&A. So if you have any questions for Christine about the STAR project or about leopard sharks or the genetics associated with either, please do add those questions to the chat. Our next speaker on the Lightning Talk stage is from our partners in the Coral Triangle Center in Bali, where our speaker works on the establishment and monitoring of marine protected areas in the region. Purwanto will be sharing a little bit about a really cool project the center has been developing around a resurgent population of dugongs in the Maluku Islands in Indonesia. Purwanto, are you ready to tell us more?
Yes. Thank you, James.
Yeah, take it away.
Sorry. Thank you, James. This is very happy to have this opportunity to share our works about dugong protection and our location in Leasi Islands in eastern part of Indonesia in Maluku. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the dugong. Dugong is like James mentioned, that is a sea coast that herbivorous marine mammals that depend on seagrass for their food. This is quite a big animals, can reach up to 300 or 400 kilograms and until 4 meters length. And the age is like a human, like us, is 70 years old. And on the protection, this is included on the world and Indonesia as endangered, threatened, and protected species. And in the US or another part, I think maybe it's more familiar with manatees. This is the animal is same families as sirenians. The difference one is you can see from the picture, the manatees is bigger and fat, more fat, and the clear differences is on the tails. The manatees have a paddle tail, and dugong have a flukes tail like whales. And we are Coral Triangle Center working with local community, local governments, and also local NGO called Bailo Maluku, supported by Critical Ecosystem Partnership Funds in Leasi Islands. We are working on dugong protection with local community, and our objective about actually we want to collect the data about dugong population and seagrass data using both field survey or also citizen science monitoring. And also we want to support, encourage the local community to protect dugong with their local wisdom, their village regulations. And another objective is we want to raising community awareness to building capacity of local people, of young children to protect the dugong with their ways. And this is the data that we have so far. After about 1.5 years, almost 2 years actually, we have 37 37 of sighting of dugongs, and most of the data has come from community citizen science monitoring. That is quite a good response from local community. And also we success to monitor the mapping of seagrass, and we found that so many feeding trails in the seagrass area. We also developed citizen science that support from local community. And we also success to support one village regulation to establish a village to regulate that village regulation to regulate the protect their natural resources, including the dugong. We also, from our survey, we know that community awareness is increasing, and they support the dugong protection in that area. And I think actually I have the last slide. I have the video from video of our dugong, but didn't work. Sorry. We identified one locations of in that area that we can mostly find the dugong in that area. So I think this is quite a good potential area for develop a sustainable tourism. But I think we need to be careful. If we want to develop the tourism, we need to carefully to avoid the disrupt the dugong itself. And what next want to do? We want to do is we would like to scale up our monitoring program, our community awareness, capacity buildings, and also in the national level, I think we would like to support and update the national plan of action of dugong conservation in Indonesia. I think this, and if you, James, and all of you want to see the dugong, so we are very happy to welcoming you all in Leasi Island. It's in Maluku in our side. Thank you.
Thank you, Purwanto. I accept your invitation, and we'll be headed right out directly. That I would love to see the dugongs in those habitats. Is you said 37 sightings in a couple of years is not very many. They've become increasingly rare. Are there other places throughout the Coral Triangle where someone might see a dugong?
Yeah, I think so. It's actually on the long time ago. Dugong is very common in almost everywhere in Indonesia, but now it's become rare. It's very hard to find the dugong. But I heard that some places, like in some place in east of Nusa Tenggara and in North Sulawesi, they still can find the dugong. But in Saparua and Leasi Islands, our previous data of dugong is, our previous survey is about 90s. It's about 20 or 25 years ago. So it's why we are running the project that want to update what is the status of the population and what is the community perception, community involvement in the protection of the dugong. I think this, James.
Well, thank you very much, Purwanto. I know that we'll have a lot of questions. I'm interested in the Q&A to talk a little bit more about the way that we interact with manatees and tourism industry here. Now, Purwanto will be back for the Q&A. Now, before we get to our next speaker, as promised, I'd like to share a little bit more about the Ocean Pavilion. So later this summer, the Ocean Pavilion will open to the public. The Ocean Pavilion represents a 50% increase in the square footage of the Seattle Aquarium and dramatically expands our ability to tell a connected global story of ocean conservation. Now, the Ocean Pavilion habitats will be home to 3,500 animals, including 30 species of coral, Indo-Pacific leopard sharks, eagle rays, giant clams, octopuses, and dozens of species of colorful reef fish. Now, in the heart of the building will be One Ocean Hall, a wraparound 360-degree plus media experience that will make you feel like you're drifting through a coral reef or a kelp forest. It'll bring you to the deepest corners of the oceans and eyes to eye with ocean giants. The featured habitat of the Ocean Pavilion recreates the diverse and complex reef environments of the Coral Triangle region, featuring angelfish, tangs, Napoleon wrasse, blacktip reef sharks, and many, many more. Everybody who's cruising along Seattle's reimagined waterfront park will be able to experience the reef through the Oculus. Located in the building's soffit outside of our front door, the Oculus gives a privileged peek at the ecosystems inside. Now, that soffit is also the home to a series of art collections designed by Lummi artist Dan Friday. Dan's art welcomes not only the visitors, but also the animals and the cultures of the Coral Triangle to their new home in the Ocean Pavilion. Now, the roof of the building features a park-like space with native plantings designed in consultation with Muckleshoot botanist Valerie Segrest to reflect native plants and foods that have sustained the peoples of the Pacific Northwest since time immemorial. Now, the rooftop space will also feature views of Mount Tahoma and the Olympics and tell stories of the interdependence of our communities and the Salish Sea. Now, while we're still putting the finishing touches on the building and the habitats within the Ocean Pavilion, the animals who will populate those habitats are already here in Seattle at our Animal Care Center, awaiting their big move to the new home on Waterfront Park. Now, the ACC is a state-of-the-art facility that not only allows us to be ready for populating the habitats of the Ocean Pavilion, but will provide valuable space for the aquarium's research and species regeneration programs. Now, the Ocean Pavilion will do more than just minimize our impact on the environment around us. The Indo-Pacific leopard sharks that call the Ocean Pavilion home will participate in the STAR project mentioned by Christine earlier this evening by providing eggs to be raised and released in the Coral Triangle's protected areas to help bolster the recovering populations in those spaces. When the Ocean Pavilion opens its doors, it will be the most environmentally sustainable aquarium building on the planet. A LEED Gold certified building, the OP will be 100% fossil fuel free in its operation and has targets for zero waste and zero net carbon by 2025. The Ocean Pavilion will not only be an exciting addition to the campus, it is a critical new platform in our mission of inspiring conservation of our marine environment. Now, watch the aquarium's website for more information very soon. Now, back to our speakers. Our next speaker is also from our partners at the Coral Triangle Center. Evi Isan is the project leader of the Nusa Penida Marine Protected Area in Bali. Nusa Penida is a multi-use protected area that includes many forms of marine tourism. Evi's going to tell us a little bit about one particular large, charismatic animal that's drawing divers from all over the world. But it might not be the animal you're thinking of. Evi, you ready to tell us more?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Evi. So I'm currently working at Coral Triangle Center as Nusa Penida project leader. So I want to share about the giant charismatic species called ocean starfish or mola mola. So we'll start with the video. Happy watching. Yeah, that's the mola mola doing the cleaning at the Crystal Bay. So there's a small bay in Nusa Penida. It's called Crystal Bay, and then that's the best place to find the mola mola in Nusa Penida. And we can predict when and where the mola mola can appear in Nusa Penida. Yeah, they have the scientific name as Mola ramsayi, and common name is ocean sunfish. Comes from the family Molidae, and then commonly known as the heaviest bony fish as well. What they eat jellyfish, zooplankton, crustacean. small fish, squid, salp, and algae. And then for the habitat, majority live within 250 depth with the temperatures between 10 until 27.5 degrees Celsius. And then based on the research with the satellite data tagging, the most distant travel for the species is up to 747 kilometers, where the data satellite put at the Nusa Penida from Bali, and then they travel to the north part of Indonesia to between at the Makassar Strait between Sulawesi and the Kalimantan Island. And last year in 2023, Nusa Penida MPA received 653,679 visitors with an average of 700 people doing marine-based activities every day. So most of them coming to Nusa Penida is want to see the mola-mola, manta, and then the diving with the coral reef as well. And this is the Crystal Bay. And then, but as we know, the mass tourism increased threats to the biodiversity in Nusa Penida MPA, such as the plastic pollution and then sewage discharge, as well unsustainable coastal development, which is right now still happening, and I think it's getting more and more. A lot of coastal development happening in Nusa Penida right now. We are with the Bali MPA Management Unit want to trying to manage the carrying capacity for the mola-mola activities and or the mola interaction with the diver, because we don't want to a lot of diver chasing up the mola-mola when the mola-mola is doing the cleaning at the cleaning station. So we also did the citizen science with the research on this rapid physiological correlation change for successful photo ID. So we believe this photo ID also can help us to monitor the mola appearance in Nusa Penida. And then we can see from this research that the longest time for one individual to coming back to the same place is 7 years. We can see the individual E with name Ophelia. The first appearance is on 28 April 2013, and then the last recorded is on 1 August in 2020. We also promoting the code of conduct for the sunfish interaction. We together with the Bali MPA Management Unit doing the outreach, doing the socialization to all of the stakeholders, mostly and especially to the dive operators and the snorkel operators, where they all bring the tourists to have interaction with the mola-mola. And then we also engage the dive operators to be a member of Greenfins. So we promoting sustainable tourism through Greenfins, and then we want to all of the diving activity and the diving industry in Nusa Penida is going with the best environmental best practice, especially when they trying to get the interaction with the marine life. Also, we try to apply the carrying capacity as well, carrying capacity study in Nusa Penida MPA. So this study is talking about the limiting number of divers in one area. So for this study, we need to buy in and the full support from the stakeholders, especially the operator and snorkel operator. So this carrying capacity can going well and run well as we hope. I'm sorry. So yeah, see you at Nusa Penida. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. I kind of thought you were going to get the lighting there in a minute, but you sailed in right underneath the wire. But the ocean sunfish is a very strange looking animal, and it certainly doesn't look very quick. If a diver approaches a sunfish, how quickly can it leave the area? Do they have little bursts of speed, or are they just sort of stuck there?
It was very quick actually. So if they the sunfish is going to the surface is for getting the cleaning at the cleaning station. So if we remember in the first slide when a lot of the small fish, so that's the cleaning is happening. The cleaning is happening. So at that time, the sunfish is already on the relax moment, so we
Yeah.
can try to chasing them, but not too close for getting photo for them, anything else. But when the sunfish is just getting to the surface, and then they just like this,
Mm-hmm.
when the position is already like this, so it's the best way we are to chasing them. So but if the position is still like this, so when we chasing them, they will go away.
They just take off.
They just take off.
Yeah.
So we need to wait until the position to become like this, and then all of the small fish eating all of the parasite in their body.
So it's easy to take pictures and to do the monitoring when they're in that sort of relaxed position. But if they want to, they can get out of there in a hurry.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, we'll have more opportunities to ask Evie questions at the end of the evening. Please do put your questions and your comments into the chat. But for now, I'd like to welcome our final speaker of the evening. Our final speaker is Holly Booth. Holly is a postdoctoral researcher with the University of Oxford who works with small-scale fisheries in Indonesia. Holly's going to tell us about a novel approach to shark conservation that involves economic incentives for releasing endangered species instead of landing them. Are you ready to bring us home, Holly?
Yes, thanks so much.
Take it away.
Great. So I'm absolutely delighted to talk to you today about my project Kebersamaan untuk Lautan, which means Togetherness for the Ocean in Indonesian, which focuses on protecting sharks and rays while supporting coastal livelihoods in Indonesia. So the Coral Triangle is a global hotspot of shark species diversity and endemicity, with more different species of sharks and rays found in the Coral Triangle than anywhere else on Earth. And recognizing this, people come from all over the world every year to visit the Coral Triangle so that they can scuba dive with sharks and rays. However, the Coral Triangle is also a hotspot of fishing pressure. Millions of people are heavily dependent on the ocean for their food and income, and the Coral Triangle is also a source of seafood for the rest of the world. So, for example, Indonesia, at the heart of the Coral Triangle, is the world's second largest fishing nation, exporting huge amounts of tuna to the United States and Japan. Indonesia also catches more sharks and rays than any other country in the world. Sometimes sharks are specifically targeted to sell their high-value fins for the international fin trade. However, more often than not, sharks and rays become entangled in nets and lines that are meant to catch other types of seafood, which many of you may eat, such as tuna and shrimp. This happens because sharks tend to hang out where the other fish hang out, and because sharks are typically large-bodied and have fins or weird-shaped heads, and so it's really easy for them to become entangled in nets and lines. Unfortunately, shark populations also grow more slowly than other fish populations, so even if just a few sharks are caught, it can have major negative impacts on their populations. And as a result, many of the world's shark populations are dramatically declining, with around a third of shark species threatened with extinction. In an ideal world, we would just stop this fishing pressure to allow populations to recover. But this is really tricky, especially in the Coral Triangle, because people are heavily dependent on fisheries. And most fisheries are small scale, meaning that they support coastal livelihoods rather than creating profit for large commercial operations. And people use pretty much everything they catch, including sharks and rays, either as a source of direct animal protein or to sell for money to feed their families and send their kids to school. And this means we face a difficult trade-off. On the one hand, we want to protect sharks and rays for their intrinsic and tourism values, but this goal is often at odds with the material well-being of coastal communities. And even though it's often said that sharks and rays are worth more alive because of the high-value dive tourism industry, most small-scale fishing communities are not well placed to benefit from the tourism industry. And so if we ask these communities to protect sharks and rays, what's in it for them? What about the income that they would lose? So over the past 4 years, we have been conducting a unique program of interdisciplinary applied research and conservation practice to try to manage this trade-off and answer the question, how can we protect sharks and rays while supporting coastal livelihoods? And answering this question is not only important to make conservation more effective by engaging fishers, but also to ensure conservation is ethical and doesn't harm the well-being of some of the world's poorest communities. So we've conducted interviews with hundreds of fishers to understand the barriers and enablers to pro-conservation behaviour. and collaboratively design solutions. And eventually, fishers agreed that they would be willing to safely release critically endangered sharks and rays from their nets if they were compensated for the money they could have otherwise sold them for in the market, which is around $2 to $5. So we distributed waterproof cameras to the fishers on the agreement that they would be compensated if they sent us videos of live releases. We've been implementing this program since May 2022 and have now had almost 1,000 releases of critically endangered wedgefish and hammerhead sharks. Importantly, fishers and their families also report positive attitudes towards the program and maintained or improved well-being during their participation. And in general, the compensation money is used to cover their daily household needs or pay for their kids' school fees. We're now training and empowering fishers to become researchers. So this is a photo of a fisher tagging a wedgefish, which he's about to release, so that we can track if it survives. And we're working with policymakers and the tourism industry to establish long-term sustainable financing. And all of this has been made possible thanks to the incredible commitment of local communities and governments and an amazing team of local Indonesian students, researchers and field staff, as well as our donors, Save Our Seas Foundation and the Darwin Initiative. So I really hope you found this interesting and inspiring. And if you want any further information or would like to donate $5 to save an endangered shark and send a fisher's kid to school, you can find us on Instagram and click the link in the bio to donate. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. I just love that program so much. And the I'm curious, you've collected 1,000 videos of animals released. Have you been surprised by any of the species that you've seen?
So the program is mainly focused specifically on wedgefish and hammerhead sharks because those are the critically endangered ones. So when we kind of set up the agreements with the fishers, we specifically said to them, you know, these are the species that we're going to compensate you for if you release them. However, one of the kind of interesting and exciting things is that sometimes we get videos of fishers voluntarily releasing other species that aren't in the program. So there's this kind of interesting suggestion that maybe through offering this compensation, it's actually making fishers just, it's actually what we would call kind of crowding in social norms for conservation. And that it's kind of making fishers more excited and enthusiastic to release other species. So for example, we had a couple of guitarfish that were released. And we also had a couple of blacktip reef sharks that were released as well. So that was surprising, not necessarily because of the species, but because we actually weren't offering fishers a compensation to release those species, but they sent us videos releasing them anyway, which is really nice to see.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think we'll explore that a little in the Q&A, which is now. So Holly will not be leaving us this time. We're going to welcome all of our Lightning Talk speakers back to the stage, and we're going to have a little bit of a chat. I've been looking at some of the questions that are coming in, and there's a lot of curiosity and a lot of these animals that you all have shared more about. Christine, in particular, I think people are fascinated by the idea of parthenogenesis. You know, recently there was a pretty kind of sensational headline in the States around an aquarium that seemed to suggest that a ray and a shark had created an egg all by themselves, like crossbreeding, when in fact it was undoubtedly an example of parthenogenesis. I mean, it's not uncommon at all, is it?
Well, parthenogenesis is now it's very common. Asexual reproduction is very common in invertebrates and plant species. In the vertebrates, so those of us with a backbone, it's been recorded from all different vertebrate groups except for mammals. So mammals don't do it, and there is actually a mechanism that prevents it from happening that some scientists have managed to turn off to enable it to occur in mice. But in the sharks and rays, as I said, over 10 different species now, it's been recorded in. And I did see there was a question in the chat about, is it more common? And one of the aspects is that we know more about it, but I don't necessarily
Mm.
think it's more common. I think we just didn't know that it really existed or how to test for it. But we know
Mhm.
how to do that now. So, when we have those tools, then we can actually start recording it more often, where I think in the past people just put it down to sperm storage.
Mm. Yeah, that seems to happen a lot, right? That it's not necessarily that things are more common. It's just that we're better at seeing them or better at
Yeah.
detecting them. I know that Indo-Pacific leopard sharks. There's some interest in identifying individual animals through spot patterns and other. We do that with a number of animals. We do with whale sharks, with spotted eagle rays. Evie, when you said that they're identifying individual mola, what are they using to identify the mola? Is it spot patterns? Is it like nicks and damage to fins? How do you identify individual animals?
By the pattern, but by the sport pattern, it just seems with the others individual. Just I remember when I'm working in Cendrawasih Bay, there's a dot pattern with the whale shark. It's different between the individual, so that's make the difference between one individual to another.
Okay. And Perwanto, so for a dugong, are you tagging them? Is it like, how are you identifying individual dugongs in your study? Oh, Perwanto, you might be muted.
Sorry. Yeah, we are not yet taking the dugong, but from the photo, from the video, we can identify it between individual with the body marker, body scars, or something in the dugong. So actually, the tagging is our next plan also. So we want to know where the dugong go or where they are feeding and something. It will be great if we can do the tagging of dugong.
So tagging's kind of a next step. I heard you say sort of body shape and scars and marks. Is there a big problem with boat strikes for dugongs? Because that's a big problem in Florida with manatees. They're slow moving and they coexist with power boats, so there are a lot of strikes, and that's a cause for mortality and damage to the animal. Is that also happening around the Moluccas?
Yeah, but actually the strike by boat is happen, but not the main problems. Not because they happen, but it's very rare. The main problem is right now is bycatch with the fishing net, because local people also fishing on that seagrass area that dugong usually feeding or playing there. It's why we encourage local community to develop local regulation, community regulation to regulate where area for fishing to avoid to disturb the dugong like that, and also the degradation of the seagrass area is one of the most threat, because from pollution from land, from household. It's why we also working with local community to aware about that, like that, James.
So local regulations are incredibly important, and to the whole process you're doing. So very involved with the community. I know that the Coral Triangle Center, that's a core value of how you all conduct your conservation research, and how you had also mentioned working really closely with community members. We had a question about pushback. Did you get pushback from any fishers that just didn't want to release the fish, didn't want to change the way that they interact with those animals? And how did you get around that, if you did, or did you?
Yeah. Sometimes take a long time to make they know about that, because in here in Leace Islands, MPA, it's usually they don't know that the dugong have like a function role.
A role in the ecosystem.
Yeah, also seagrass like that. So as long as we can ask them, we make like socialization. What is the objective of this protection? They usually aware and they want to follow the regulation. Yeah. It's few fishermen, few local community, not happy with this, but mostly local community agree with the regulations, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
but this is take a time, James.
Takes time. And Holly,
Yeah.
sort of the same thing, takes time.
Yeah, so for our program, actually, I mean, it's a really interesting question, but I think the beauty of our program is that it's completely voluntary. So there's no regulations involved, and so it's up to fishers if they want to participate or not. And so we offer them to join, and if they want to participate, we give them a waterproof camera, and if they want to submit videos of them releasing the wedge fish and hammerheads for compensation, then they can. But if they don't want to, then they don't have to. So actually, we've kind of had zero pushback because it's completely voluntary. And one of the really interesting things that we've found is fishers' attitudes towards the program are overwhelmingly positive. And even fishers that have never submitted a video to us and have never received any compensation still say that they like the program. And often they say things like, because there's no pressure. Basically, they don't feel like we're telling them what to do, or they don't feel like there's kind of a top-down regulation that's having negative impacts on them and their livelihoods. But actually, we had a participatory process to design it, and then it's up to fishers whether or not they want to participate. And so that's been kind of a key interesting lesson learned, really, is that having this more sort of, voluntary approach, actually you just get way more buy-in and way more participation.
There's more of an invitation than it is a recruitment necessarily. Okay.
Exactly.
Christine, I think there's curiosity about the population of leopard sharks in Raja Ampat and elsewhere. I mean, why are we specifically focusing on that particular species for this effort?
Certainly. So the idea of STAR really originated back in about 2015 when we were undertaking the IUCN Red List assessment, and it became increasingly evident that these leopard sharks were endangered throughout much of their range. A lot of assessments are based on fishing data, and when you have animals that are fairly rare already, it's not necessarily particularly informative data. So we were starting to get more information through scuba diving observations as well. And what we found was a lot of people had sort of missed that this species was disappearing. So they used to be very common throughout Southeast Asia, so from Thailand through in Indonesia. And then once we started actually digging into records of scuba records, we could see that their observations had just dropped right off. Now, when I say they're not so common, in Australia, where I do a lot of my work, we have one of the largest populations, or probably the largest population that we know of in the world. And we're talking about a few thousand animals. So when you see photos of fish markets where there are dozens of animals in a pile that have been caught, they probably have been targeting something like a breeding aggregation. And so a lot of the key, important breeding animals can be removed very quickly. Raja Ampat specifically was proposed as a location because there's a lot of work that had been done there over the past years. It is site of the first shark and ray sanctuary in Southeast Asia. It's a series of marine protected areas. And it is home to leopard sharks. They used to have been seeing a lot more than they are now. The numbers have dropped right down. So this is 20 in over 20 years or something that have been observed. A really key thing about a rewilding project is that it's not a silver bullet. It's not an idea that we're going to save the world by releasing animals. It's one tool in the toolkit that has to work with other tools like what Holly's talking about. We need to work with the fishermen. It's a marine protected area, so it means when we release animals, they won't be fished immediately, which is super important. So we use the STAR project also to catalyze other conservation initiatives, species protection, spatial protection, and the like.
Thank you. Evie, so people are looking at that ocean sunfish, and if you've never seen one before, it's kind of hard to tell what you're looking at. Like it kind of looks like a fish head with fins. Like, can you tell us a little bit more about how the anatomy of an ocean sunfish? Why does it look so strange?
Yeah, what make it strange because the anatomy actually, the sunfish is when they fish, they like this,
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the dorsal fin, and then this is the anal fin. This is what make it strange with the other fish. So they swim like this, it's like that. So they also have the pectoral fin is close to their eyes in here, and then they have mouth and eyes, and they're very sensitive. Mola mola is live in the deep waters around 250 meters. So when they come to the surface for doing the cleaning, some of the divers chasing with the bleach lighting from the camera, and it's very uncomfortable for them actually. So that's why in the code of conduct we suggest the diver, if you want to take a picture and video, just not using the light, because it's very make the sunfish uncomfortable.
Because it's a deep water animal, the use of the flash and the lights is probably really upsetting and alarming. Yeah. That makes sense.
They used to live with very limited light, so when they come to the surface, the diver chasing with the light from the strobe is very uncomfortable for them.
Yeah. Well, when we were visiting in October, we went out to Crystal Bay to try to catch a sighting of an ocean sunfish, and the other divers in the party were luckier than I was. It was a little bit too deep for my skill set, but I know that one of my colleagues managed to see one from a distance. But it's not a done deal, right? It can be difficult to find them, can't it?
Yeah. Sometimes difficult, and then we need a bit lucky as well, because it's very sensitive. And I've read from the research that the longest time they come to the surface is only for 41 minutes. The longest time they are doing cleaning at the surface. So after that, they will go again to the deep water. So that's why it's sometimes getting harder.
Yeah, that idea of the animal as being valuable for tourism is, we certainly, Holly had mentioned that. The leopard sharks are certainly something that people love to see when they're on a dive in Raja Ampat. It's a beautiful, graceful animal. Manatee tourism in Florida is huge. Like, people pay for boats and snorkeling with them, and they get way too close because the manatees have kind of gotten used to them. Are the villages in the Moluccas, are they interested in tourism around dugongs? Are they nervous about it? Like, how are they thinking about that?
Yeah, I think it's after we identified one location that we can almost always see in the dugong. So the tourists, the local people is sometimes want to do snorkeling with the dugong, and one fisherman is starting to make a dugong tourism to when the tourism come to the village, they ask fishermen as a guide. So I think the tourism with the dugong will be potential to develop in this area, as long as we quarantine that we can see the dugong, because the dugong is very, very, very hard to find. To find them. It's very rare. Usually they only going to the surface for a couple seconds and then go again.
Mhm.
It's uncommon to see the dugong. It's maybe different with manatees.
Yeah, it's
But-
definitely because when the manatees are in the rivers, then they're in sort of shallow, and a lot
Yeah.
of them are together. So it definitely feels a little bit different.
Yeah. Mm.
Holly, when you all are working in your program, like, are you worried about people like targeting those animals so they can get paid to release them? Like, do you all worry about people trying to game the system?
No, it's a really good question. And, fishes are smart. And if they can figure out a way to get a bit more money for their family and their kids, that, they will do it. So it's a totally valid question. I think there are two things. One is that the program was based on quite a lot of sort of pre-program participatory research where we were trying to understand, I guess, the drivers and constraints to sort of pro-conservation behavior. And one of the things that came out was that there was a general sense that catches of wedgefish and hammerheads was kind of random. Like, the fishers couldn't necessarily predict it. And there was a general sense that at certain times of year there were more, and we do know that it's kind of there are seasonal breeding, for example, or that in some certain habitats and places they might tend to catch more. But it seemed to be something that fishers didn't have a huge amount of control over in terms of being able to, go out and be sure that they could go and find those species. However, the other thing is that we're actually, what I didn't mention in the talk, we're running the pay to release program as a randomized controlled trial. So what that means is we have split the fishers into two random groups, and we have one group that are offered the treatment. So they're offered the compensation, they're given cameras, and if you send us a video, we'll pay you. And there's another group that acts as the control. And so and actually we switched the two groups around so that all fishers have the opportunity to participate. But at any one time, there is a group of fishers who are not eligible to receive the compensation. They're just getting on with their lives and their fishing activity like normal, as though there's no program. And this provides us a really robust method to measure whether or not it's working. And so what we're actually measuring then is not only the number of releases, but the retained catches in those two groups.
Okay.
And then by comparing the retained catches in those two groups and also looking at the number of releases, that then allows us to figure out, has the number of retained catches significantly decreased when we're offering the compensation program? And does it look like there's been some kind of hidden spillover effect where actually, because if you were to look at the retained catches plus the releases, if that's higher than the retained catches of the control group, then that would indicate that there are some fishers that are going to catch more. The interesting thing is that based on the data we have so far, for most fishers that isn't the case, but we have found that there appears to be maybe one or two vessels that might have like specialist information, for example, on where a particular site is. And it does seem that for one or two vessels, they may be catching more than we would otherwise expect. That was in the initial stage of the trial. What we've since done, so this is kind of the beauty of the randomized control trial, because we would have never detected that without the randomized control trial. We've since tweaked the program a little bit, and so we've actually put a cap on the number of releases that any one vessel is allowed to report per week, based on what we would expect according to the control group. Right. And so this then basically stops fishers from going to catch more, because they're not going to be compensated if they report hundreds of releases, because that seems to be more than would happen otherwise. So that's kind of how we've sort of tweaked the program to get around that. So yeah, really good question.
Is that information also interesting or valuable if a particular group seems to be able to locate those animals on a consistent basis?
Yeah, I mean, because it's also then potentially useful for things like sort of setting up spatial protections as well. Because I guess another thing I didn't mention is that these fisheries are located near a marine protected area. But it's kind of a multi-use zone. So it's not a no-take zone. People are allowed to fish in and around the area. but there are certain parts of the marine protected area that can be designated as no-take zones. So actually, if we can figure out, where are the hotspots
Right.
of catches of these species, we can then use that as part of the overall spatial and fisheries management of the area. So yeah, it's all useful information that can ultimately be used for management.
Nice. Well, that's going to be all the time we have for our Q&A. I want to take a minute for everybody to appreciate our speakers. Amazing as always. Of course, if we were in a room together, they would all stand in thunderous applause, but maybe we could drop some applause emoji in the chat or something like that. Thank you all again. Now, before we wrap, I want to share something that's really cool. You may remember our two-time Lightning Talk speaker, Kakani Khatija from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute. Kakani and her team have developed a free mobile game where you can interact with real ocean images collected on deep sea expeditions. And playing the game helps train their artificial intelligence, their AI, to better recognize those deep sea animals and help improve their research. So the game, Fathomverse, is available now on the Apple Store and on Google Play. And I don't want to brag, but I've already advanced several levels in the Fathomverse universe. So please join me in playing the game and helping out Kakani and their team with their research. Now, our final Lightning Talk episode of the season will be on July 18th. The topic was chosen by you all, and it will be rays. So rays are a lot like sharks, only flatter. Now, we've already got some great ideas for this particular program, so please do make sure to mark your calendar. And of course, if you enjoyed tonight's event, tonight's free science event, please do consider a donation for the Seattle Aquarium to keep events like Lightning Talks free and accessible for all. Now, visit our Lightning Talks homepage on the Seattle Aquarium website, and you can find links to all of our previous programs and seasons. You can also submit your own ideas for future episodes and topics and for future speakers. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and have a great evening.